everybody. So today is our final Coach Masterclass of the school year, which is slightly scary. But today we are joined by Belinda, who is a maternal guilt expert, who's going to help us say goodbye to the guilt this summer holidays. So this is why this is the last one of the school year. I think it's something that we all need. Now, Belinda is a mum of two, positive psychology coach, and author of Challenge Your Guilt: How to Flourish in Motherhood, Work and Life. And she also hosts the Challenge Your Guilt podcast. So through her coaching, writing and podcast, Belinda supports mothers to untangle guilt and perfectionism and all those impossible expectations so we can stop blaming ourselves and build a version of motherhood, work and life that actually has room for us too. She also partners with organisations to deliver talks and workshops on maternal guilt, work and motherhood, and practical positive psychology tools that support women's well-being, confidence and career sustainability. So I do think you are perfectly placed to challenge our guilt today. So welcome once again, Belinda. Thanks so much for being here.
Thank you. I'm so excited to be here. And this is a really important and a big topic. And I know a lot of us are scrambling and worrying about what lies ahead in the summer. So I think summer holiday guilt has always been like one of my favorite things to talk about.
Fabulous. Wow. Talk away. I think, first of all, anybody does have any comments or questions, please share them in the comments and we'll try and answer them at the end. But yeah, guilt is such a big topic. I know it's something that I felt ever since becoming a mother, or it's not that I only just started to feel it. I feel like it's the only time I've really noticed guilt and how much it plays a big part of my life. And that's pit of the stomach feeling that I get when I feel like I've made the wrong decision or done the wrong thing or made a mistake. And it's funny because we asked our audience about what they feel most guilty about. And we said, do you feel most guilty about work or parenting, relationships, so with your partner, or something else? And interestingly, we've never had this before. It was a 50-50 split between work and parenting, which is no surprise, really. Relationships didn't come into the picture at all, but I suddenly had the guilt of, probably maybe should feel guilty about that, but it doesn't come in the priorities. So I imagine that is so common for so many of us, that we just have this guilt wrapped up in so many aspects, being a working parent or even just being a parent, even if you're not working. So you've written a whole book and you have a whole podcast around this topic of guilt. Can you explain, obviously we all know what it feels like, but where it comes from or what it is and why we get those feelings?
Absolutely. And I'm not surprised that it was a split, to be honest, because I think when we look at the kind of trajectory that we go through as women in life, it's kind of like increasingly as I've been involved in this work, been thinking it's no wonder that we end up in this place of extreme guilt when we become mothers, because we are kind of brought up in this culture, this kind of capitalist culture where we are very much kind of focusing on our success and, ambition and career. I don't think there's much education about what actually happens when you have children. Like none of us, you don't, I don't, speaking personally, didn't really think too much about it. I kind of assumed that one day I would have children and that would be great. But we get very much funneled into the education system and, what we're going to do for our careers. And it's not until often a lot of the mums that I work with, it's often not until you actually have the baby and you think, hang on a second, this is not compatible with the successful, ambitious version of me that I've been taught is what I should be striving for in my life. And now I have this child, and actually this child also has, well, most children also have a father. Not all children have fathers present, but there is this kind of clash of ideology and identity and everything that comes with, well, hang on. So now I've got the baby, but actually it's me that's expected to do the majority of the caregiving, the mental load, all of the things that come with having a child. And yet I'm also kind of expected to step back into my work as if nothing's changed. And we've also got this ridiculous working day still, which is antiquated, dating from way back when, to this beautiful, maybe it wasn't that beautiful for other reasons, but, this time when parents could perhaps afford to have one parent at home that wasn't working. And I'm not saying it's right that would more often not be the mother, and the mother had to take on the caregiving responsibilities, but at the same time, we are now living in a modern world where most parents have to work. It's not a luxury that a lot of people have. And actually, let's just add that being a stay-at-home parent is also far from a luxury. There's challenges on all sides. But the point I'm trying to make is, I think modern mothers especially are in a bit of a funnel at the moment where the guilt is so extreme because we are expected to we're conditioned into this good girl, good mother narrative, societal narrative, that we have to be good mothers. We have to be patient with our children. We have to be emotionally available to our children. Our own needs must go on the back burner. And all of that is something that is deeply ingrained in most of us, whether we consciously realize that or not. Then we have the career strand, which for those of us who want slash need to return to our careers after having children, it's not an easy ride because we go back different. Thank God we're finally starting to have this word matrescence and all of this, the knowledge that comes from that. Our brains are actually different after we have children. We go back into the workplace. Discrimination, at best, employers, I think, not understanding the transition, the huge identity transition and the shift and the difficulty of returning to a workplace if you're going back to the same workplace where you feel different and it's not like easy to just pick it back up again. Add in the fact that you have genuine structural challenges of not being able to drop off, pick up, all that kind of stuff. And that horrible transition that I see in so many mums, myself included, as a self-employed mum who has flex, still find that first bit of the day horrific. The post drop off, come back, try and start work. Oh my God, holding the emotions, all of that stuff. We feel guilty because we have too much on our plates. We are still, as women, conditioned to be the ones who feel responsible for our children's well-being. So every decision that we make, we take on ourselves. It's if something goes wrong with this decision that I make, with the childcare, with the caregiving, my career, like whatever that is, we are conditioned to believe that our children's well-being is our responsibility. This is what I think, right? Everyone may not agree with me, but I think that's a big reason why we feel guilt, because we look at our life and we think, I should be doing better. Like my career was going well. Now I can't get it together. I've always wanted a baby and now I've got a baby and it's the hardest thing I've ever done. And I feel like I have no support and I'm losing it. I'm losing my mind. Everything I do feels like it's wrong. I'm ruining my children's lives. Like it's so easy to fall into that spiral. But the actual reality is that modern mothers have too much on their plate. And the guilt comes from this perpetual striving to succeed with achieving this unrealistic societal expectation of being this perfect mother, perfect worker, perfect partner, perfect everything, which was never achievable and is even less achievable in modern life with all the additional pressures of having two parents having to work and etc. The guilt is the symptom. The guilt is the gateway, the everything else that we feel. This is why people say to me like, oh, I don't feel like I need to be coached in guilt. I don't coach in guilt necessarily specifically. It's more that the guilt is showing you that something's wrong. And I think that's the fundamental thing that we need to realize is that we are not failing individually. We feel like we're failing at work because we're, worrying about what's going on at home. We feel like we're failing at home because we're worrying about what's going on at work. But the reality is there is not enough of us to go round and there is not enough time. Summer holidays could not be a worse time for working mothers because of all of those reasons, because it falls to us to, not always, again, some of us might have wonderfully supportive partners and thank God for those people. But for those who are very much like entrenched in this traditional conditioning, I would love to know how many people watching this, how many people that you work with, in your daily life or actually in your own life, Amy, how many people's partners are scrabbling around right now to book holiday clubs? How many people's partners have actually even looked across the calendar to think about what the summer is going to look like? Because these are tasks that should not be done solely by mothers, but I am seeing a lot of the mums that I'm working with, those are the challenges that they're facing, and they're very, very real challenges. So again, the guilt, if you can't afford holiday clubs, what do you do with the kids? The screen guilt. Oh my God, the screen guilt is massive in summer holidays. We feel guilty about everything because we feel like everything is our responsibility and it shouldn't be like that.
There's so much within there that I was nodding along and I was writing notes because it resonates so much. And you're right. And actually, I was going to ask this question at the end, but I feel like you've touched on it already. When it comes to, we have this thing called mum guilt. Do you think dads feel that guilt? Do you think we haven't got dad guilt because they don't feel it? Or do you think it's because, like you say, actually, it's because we take on all of that responsibility? And it's funny you say about the summer holiday calendar. I had that conversation with my husband the other day about clubs, and he has no idea what I am going through. And he said the one thing he was thinking about this summer was, right, we need to get the car booked in for the MOT. I've done it on this day. And I said, well, that doesn't work because we need to get this person to this club and this person to this club, and I need to work on that day. So what we're going to do about it? But that hadn't even crossed his mind that was something to think about. He just did the job that he needed to do. So for him, I guess the guilt was thinking, right, we need to get the car done before we go away. That was on his to-do list, but he had no awareness of all the other stuff. So do you think dads feel the guilt in the same way, or do you think they feel it at all? And off the back of that, do you think the mum guilt has come purely from how we are managing as modern mothers, as opposed, do you think this existed in the past?
So I think dads absolutely do feel guilt. I think, speaking from my own situation, I know my husband feels enormous amounts of guilt because he works away a lot. So he doesn't see the kids and he feels racked with guilt about the fact that he's not there for them physically. I think it's really important to recognize that men are also trapped in this patriarchal, system that we're in, and they themselves have been conditioned into, the role of that they're in. And it is uh, uh, this melting pot. You can see how it filters across the whole of society, because you look at the gender pay gap, for example. In many situations it makes more sense for the man to have the big job, and the problem is that with the big job comes the responsibilities, the not being able to, couldn't possibly cancel a meeting, couldn't possibly pick up a sick child. It unfortunately, that is all part and parcel of the conditioning that we have all been conditioned into. So it may not be in many cases that men want that to be the case, and they may be very well aware of that being the case, but it's still falling to the women because of the way that we're conditioned and the way that we are recognized as being the responsible caregivers, the ones that have to drop everything. So I think absolutely, many men do feel guilt, and it's something that I am interested in, like the interplay between that. But I think particularly from that systemic perspective of, like, the men are also trapped in the system, but the women are suffering more. That's not in this area when we're talking specifically about guilt and these kind of systemic issues around work. And so, yeah, I think they do experience guilt. I think it's different. I think the thing to remember is that the good mother narrative is very deeply embedded in women, and therefore that sense of, like, ultimate responsibility, and therefore guilt when we feel like we perceive that we're dropping balls. That is a woman specific thing.
Somebody said that their husband has no school apps, no WhatsApp groups. I've told him he needs to. He avoids them like the plague. And I think so many of us, myself included, know that feeling. I guess it's very typical, but I think it showed that distinction that actually we have no choice but to sign up to those things. Sometimes they can get a choice, even if we try and force them. Actually, I forced my husband onto loads of WhatsApp chats and he just ignored them. So it's about where that responsibility goes, isn't it? And almost doing your best to help them get on there, but there's not much we can do.
No,
I
case in
think
point. Case in point.
whether you think this guilt has always been there, or you think it's, like you say, a symptom of modern motherhood.
Yeah, no, I think mum guilt has, and actually something that probably is quite important to say, and where I often start when I'm working with mums or speaking to employers, is recognizing that some guilt can be helpful. So I'm not on a mission to eliminate guilt, part and parcel. Fundamentally, guilt is a sign, or historically, and the way it should be, is that we feel guilty if we genuinely have done something wrong, because the guilt is something that is a signal to us that we need to modify our behavior in a way that aligns us better with our values. Fundamentally, that's it. Screen time, feel guilty. Maybe the kids have been watching screen too long, doesn't align with my value of family, connection, health, whatever that might be. Turn screens off, do something else, is an example that I use a lot. So it can be helpful, but where it becomes unhelpful and I think harmful to women, and where I think a lot of modern mothers are currently sitting, is this place of real societally driven guilt, which is what I call unhelpful guilt. So the kind of guilt that speaks to you in the voice of your inner critic. It's a critical voice that you have absorbed from outside, from external societal expectations. That is the voice that we need to challenge. So that's the type of guilt that we need to challenge, is when you hear that voice and it's telling you you're a bad mum and you've done this wrong and why didn't you do that and you really should have done that. Shoulds, hate shoulds. When as soon as you hear the should, like, challenge it. So I think, yes, guilt has always been around, and I think it is not always a bad thing. But when it is getting to the point where you are spiraling into shame because you really feel like you're not coping, that's when you need to do something about it. And there are, eh, it's difficult because I do coach, I work in the coaching space. Um, and there are a lot of practical things we can do, and there are a lot of tools and wellbeing, things that we can use. And thinking through the things that we need to better support ourselves is a big part of what I do. Like, how can we challenge that guilt? Actually, also, how can we seek to meet our needs a bit better? And when it comes into summer holidays, there's never a better example of, we know what is coming. So we've, most of us have done this a few times well, not everyone, but for some people, this might be your first time. It's going to be hard. There will hopefully be some joyful moments as well. So let's not like be too doom and gloom, but it's about having a really clear expectation, understanding, thinking ahead, asking yourself what you're going to need. And if there is any way you can meet some of those needs head on, who can you ask for help? How can you feel more supported? Where can you delegate? If you have a partner, to your partner. If you don't have a partner, could you set something up with a friend? Could you ask someone to be like your buddy? Do you have family? Who are your people? You know, like most of us don't have a tribe, but most of us do have someone that is a trusted person we could lean on. Having all of that mapped out ahead of time to think to mitigate that guilt. And screen time is an important one actually, because I still feel a lot of guilt, by the way. So don't think that it doesn't go away just magically because of tools to help you. But what it does do when you have those tools is it means that you can think a bit more rationally. I know my kids are going to have more screen time in the holidays. Like that is going to happen. But when you think about it ahead of time and you put the boundaries in place of what is acceptable for you, not acceptable for society. So again, ask yourself, what are your values when it comes to the school holidays? What are your non-negotiables? Where are the areas that create the most guilt for you? So for me, that might be screen time. How can I mitigate that guilt that I will feel because the kids will watch more screen time? What does that look like? It might be, for me, for example, it's often I just can't. I mean, they do go on their tablets, but I just can't bear it when like one program goes into the next program and then suddenly they've watched 6 hours of TV and you're like, oh my God, we haven't left the house today. This is a disaster. Is it more like I did this morning? But both my kids are off school and I just thought, oh my God, like what am I going to do today? And then I was like, okay, they had a huge fight. They went to their rooms. They started playing nicely. And I said, when I go to Pilates, you can watch film together. So for me, my boundaries might be like, okay, we're going to watch more TV, but what does that look like? You know, it might look like every day they can watch a film together and then maybe they can have XYZ amount of time, separate time on their tablets, but no more than that. You know, it doesn't always work out. There'll be days when it goes completely wrong and everything goes out the window and they've watched 12 hours of TV and, you know, you've just given up and whatever. You're eating takeaway in your pants, whatever. I think that, you know, thinking about how to mitigate the guilt can be a really helpful way to help you manage it ahead of time. But asking for help, we're not always very good at doing that is the other problem, right? Because we're so conditioned into how we should be that when we deviate from how we feel we should be and we start to feel shame is a very like inward seeking emotion. So when you start to feel shame, I'm not doing it right. You look at everyone else, you think, oh my God, you know, they've just come back from Spain and they all look so happy and everything's fine and they're going to the park and they're going to Center Parks and everyone's got a plan. And you start feeling shame. It becomes harder and harder to actually ask for help and admit that you're not coping. So I think work out who those trusted people are. Think about what you're going to feel the most guilty about in holidays. You know, for most of us, it's probably going to be the juggle, the work, and the kids, and all the rest of it. Think about your values, what your values really are. Like, ignore the societal stuff. God, maybe just don't look at Instagram for a few weeks. Maybe just unfollow every single influencer or every single local mum, turn off the WhatsApps. Do you know what I mean? Like just whatever it takes to just not look at other people and think that they're doing better than you. All of those things, I think, help with guilt.
Yeah, there is so much in there. Like you say, so I put this umbrella over in fact, my newsletter, this was about the fact that someone related to structural failing, it isn't personal. And it's like you say, it's all of these shoulds that we feel like we should be doing. It should look like this. We should be going on those day trips. We shouldn't have that much screen time. But I love your system where you're thinking ahead of time and you're thinking, okay, what can I put in place now? And it goes back to your values and it goes back to if it starts to go into shame, then doing something about that. And like you say, screen time is a really good example of that because it might be that we need it to juggle that work, or we need it if we need some quiet time. I also felt very much your bit around the needs piece, because in the past for me, I very much focused. We get this guilt of, oh, you've only got 18 summers with the kids, you've got to do everything. Like you say, you go on Instagram and everybody's doing everything. Nobody takes a photo of their kids on the screen and watching TV. You see these tiny snippets of this wonderful world that people live in, and it's a load of rubbish. So, but what I've done in the past is very much focus on that as opposed to thinking about what I need. And so, like you said, when summer holidays comes, routine goes out the window. my exercise routine and my time for myself goes out the window because our routines everywhere. But this year, I'm going to do my best now to really even build in that time, because when your needs go, when you start feeling rubbish, that's when it all starts to unravel, doesn't it? And that's when that shame builds up, because you think, oh God, they're watching more TV because I feel crap and I just need to watch TV and all of those things. So I think those things are really key, thinking about your values, your needs, and your boundaries, and where you can give or take a little bit. Because I think having that flexibility around the summer holidays and giving yourself a little bit of grace is really important, and not thinking about what it should look like and just kind of going with it. I know for me last year, I really over structured our holidays, and I put them into clubs and this and that, because I felt like I had to do that much work, and and actually in the end it was too much. And I felt guilty because we didn't have any downtime and we didn't have any rest, and we didn't have days just sitting in our PJs. And so this year I kind of built that into Italy, into the calendar, to just be like, right, no, we're just going to have those days where it's just us, and we'll figure out what we're going to do. We're not going to plan anything yet, and just see what happens on those days. And whether that's a day on TV, fine. Yeah, I do think all of those constructs around the shoulds is something we need to get rid of. So that's really helpful. Is there anything else that you think we can do in those moments where maybe we can't plan for everything over the summer? Is there anything else you can do in the moments when you're starting to feel that guilt and that voice in your head? What can we do in those moments where maybe we're not expecting to feel guilty about something?
I would say I love the power of the pause. I think it's really important to pause. I mean, it's really easy when we're feeling overwhelmed and overloaded to not do that. And I think what I'm learning with my two is that, because like we can all be quite fiery, is the difference that it makes to actually just take a breath. And even if you have to leave the room when everything's feeling really overwhelming. With the guilt specifically, I think, and the challenging the guilt, I think the first thing to do when that feeling of like overwhelming guilt comes into your mind is to ask yourself whose voice that's speaking to you in. So again, going back to what I said before, like, is this voice my voice that's speaking to me about my values, about I'm doing something wrong that's not aligning with my values? Or is this coming from outside of myself and what I feel I should be doing or we should be doing? It's funny because I actually been having this feeling like I've overstructured our holidays, and I was like, oh my God, booked all these holiday clubs exactly like you said. But then if we have to cancel a day or two, then so be it. I think we just have to feel our way through. But I think that the first step is to ask yourself whose voice is speaking to you in. And then really important, like always trying to reframe it in a more positive way. I mean, more often than not, our guilt is telling us that we care, which can never be a bad thing. And I think we just need to, like you say, give ourselves more grace. I really believe, and I'm exactly the same as you, I'm really going to try and build in some kind of self-care this year, because I think I did that this week, funnily enough, on Monday, because we've got a big, had this big run up to the holidays when my husband's mad busy and basically not here at all in the week. And we had a chat on Sunday and recognized that we didn't, if one of us didn't slow down, then we were on a bit of a fast track to burnout, and before the holidays even begin. And I recognized with some frustration, to be honest, with in terms of the whole stuff we've talked about, systemic, reasons, it has to be me that steps up to resource myself better ahead of the holidays, because I'm self-employed. I have more flex. I mean, I'm here today with the kids off. I had to cancel some meetings, but I can rearrange those meetings. It's not the end of the world. I just took 4 hours off on Monday, and I really didn't have the time to do it. And not everyone will have the time to do this. And this is not, if you're in a 9 to 5 office job where you have to be present, I get it. This is not something you can do. But maybe there is something you can do on a smaller scale, or after your work or at the weekend, where you can say it's really about like setting that boundary. I need this some time to myself. Like, even if it's an hour, let it be real time to yourself, not necessarily like time that you feel you have to exercise, or time that you feel, I mean, exercise is good for us, I get it, but especially in the holidays, I think it's more like what will nourish me the most, what will sustain me. For me, on Monday, it was I need to get to the sea. Like, I'm lucky that I don't live that far away from the sea. So I was like, I got on a train. I had this weird paranoia because everyone had been up watching the World Cup football at 1 o'clock in the morning. I had this real paranoia the roads would be really dangerous. So I was like, I'm not going to drive. I'll get a train. I just got a 20-minute train and to the beach. And I was there for an hour and a half. It was like, it was not a long trip. But what it did give me was perspective, headspace, which I desperately needed. and time, to myself. I have noticed the benefits of that all week, ever since then. I don't know how I didn't lose my patience this morning worse than I did. I did a little bit, but not that bad. When you are more resourced, you are able to cope better. You are more patient, you are nicer to yourself, and you are nicer to everyone around you. And I think in the holidays, it's never more important than being as resourced as you possibly can be. And it shouldn't fall to the mothers to do the work, to be the most resourced. But I think given that the system that we're in and the fact that we are, many of us, victims of this ridiculous societal, challenges, it's about resourcing yourself as best you can. So building in, if you can, in any way, shape or form, an hour here, an hour there for something that nourishes you, not something you feel you should do or you have to do. Let it be something that's out of the house, and ideally let it be something that's in nature or with a friend or something that will really like fill your cup, because I guarantee you that if you have that, even just a little bit of that, it will make the holidays feel less stressful. And I think too many of us don't do that. I think we go into it and we're focused on in the holidays is getting through, doing the work, and we don't think about what we need beyond that. And I think if you think about the holiday time being a time when we need more resources than ever, then you start to think about why it's so important that you resource yourself.
Yeah, absolutely. It goes back to that you can't pour from an empty cup. And it's one of those things where that self-kindness, we talked about it before in other masterclasses, is something that we feel hugely guilty about, taking that time for us. But like you say, it actually doesn't have to be big, doesn't have to be long. And sometimes you can't plan it, even if it's you walk the long way home through the woods after you drop them off at holiday club, or you do that just before you pick them up and you go and have a coffee with a friend, whatever it is, those tiny micro moments where you can just sit. Even for me, I just have to be able to sit and look up at the sky and just breathe. Like I've started to be one of those mums where I've realized I can't function in the morning if I'm being woken up by my kids straight away. They are my alarm clock. They have been for 7 years, and it's drained my nervous system. And now if I can help it, if I can just manage 5 minutes without them being awake, to go up and literally put my head outside a window and breathe in peace, that sets my whole day up properly, and that makes a big difference. And I do not feel guilty about it or bad or any of those things, because that is what I need. So hopefully, if everybody can just take away from this fab chat and all of your fab words of wisdom, it is about putting ourselves first and listening to our own voice. I think that was really poignant, about listening to that voice, and whether it's our voice or whether it's a societal voice, and thinking about how we can put ourselves and weave ourselves into the summer holidays and about, and then not feel guilty about it. Hopefully we'll all be on to a perfectly sustainable summer where we don't just survive, we actually
We thrive.
we thrive, and we enjoy parts of it. It's okay.
It is hoping. It is hoping. Oh yeah, it's hard. It's hard, and yeah, of course we want to enjoy it as well. Whatever we're doing, whether we're having staycations, going away, like whatever it might be, the ultimate goal is to enjoy having family time. It shouldn't feel so stressful that we go into holidays and all we think is that I'm stressed because I don't know what I'm going to do with my kids. It's sad that is the reality for so many people. So yeah, I think we just need to think about how we can resource ourselves. I mean, yeah, the system is broken, but there are also things we can do to make it a bit easier for ourselves. And I think that's probably the bottom line.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, if anybody would like to know more about this and learn and cram in as much knowledge around how to challenge their own guilt, where can they find out more about you? Where can they find your book and your podcast?
Yeah, so I am, obviously, whoever's watching me here can see that I'm at Flourishing Mother on Instagram. So please give me a follow. I've got a newsletter which goes out every Tuesday. So in the little bio on Instagram, you can sign up for the newsletter. Challenge Your Guilt the podcast is available on all the usual podcast channels. So those are probably the two best places to start.
Well, we will leave there. Thank you so much, Belinda. I really hope that you are able to have a wonderful summer, and the rest of your day, at least you can get through that without feeling bad about anything, because you've showed up here with 2 kids at home. So well done you.
I know, and I made it till 10:45 before I let them have screens, which is a miracle. So I'm feeling already quite virtuous today.
You've won for the day. This is
I've
it.
won.
You have absolutely won. Go and have as much screens as you like now. There's not much of the day left.
Yeah, who cares?
Exactly. Winning.
Thank you.
All right, my love. Take care. Bye.